everyone. My name is T, and I'm on the Vancouver Startup Week team. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are grateful to be virtually gathered on Indigenous land, regardless of where you are joining us from. I'm grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. I'm privileged to live, work, and play on these lands. First, I'd like to thank you for joining us for VSW 2021, and welcome to Creating Ethical Global Partnerships, Lesson from a Tea Cap, hosted by JusTea. This session is also part of the VSW Growth Track and is proudly supported by Innovate BC. Innovate BC is a Crown agency that provides small businesses around the province with funding, business coaching, and educational content. They're helping entrepreneurs and founders start and scale their business and adapt to the changes brought on by COVID-19. So if you're looking for support for your business, make sure you stop by their booth to learn more about how they can help you. This session is also part of the VSW Experience Package, which we are very excited to have for the first time this year. So for those that have a box, please feel free to join in on the interaction portion of the session and share your experience with us on social media by tagging us at Van Startup Week. And if you have any questions for our speaker, Paul, please post them in the Q&A in the Huva session. And you can also upvote questions from other attendees, but I'll pass the mic over to Paul and we'll begin.
Thanks, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Good morning, everybody. In Kenya, in Swahili, if we were saying good morning, it would be habari asubuhi. So habari asubuhi. It's great to be here on this beautiful Vancouver morning. I kind of wish I was back in Kenya. It's been too long since I've been able to get back there, but nevertheless, it's wonderful to be able to participate in this event, and thank you, VSW, for putting this on. So today I wanted to first make a cup of tea because I know a bunch of you haven't tried JusTea before, or maybe you have received some of the Purple Rain tea that was part of the package that was sent out. So let's make a cup of Purple Rain here. So I've already scooped some leaves in the bottom of the cup that you can see there. And I'm gonna pour some water. This water is just under a boil. Spilled a little bit there, but no burns, so that's okay. And one of the key things with tea, to make the perfect cup of tea, is the water temperature, is setting a timer. So for this guy, I'm going to do 4 minutes. So we got 4 minutes counting down there. The water temperature is really important, just so you don't burn the leaves, especially if it's like a green tea. Most teas are just under a boil is fine. And then you just want to steep the tea. So I'm actually making it in this fancy tea cupping set here. This is how you would score the teas or review the quality. So I have about 20 of these, and so I'll be tasting teas all the time. And so I'll be steeping some Purple Rain this morning. In a few minutes, we can taste it together. So Purple Rain's a really special tea. It actually comes from this farmer here, Boaz, who's one of my dear friends, one of our key partners in Kenya. So JusTea actually stands for Justly Made Tea. And it's called Justly Made Tea because we're the first farmer-direct tea partnership in Kenya. So myself and my family, I was born and raised in Vancouver. We travel back and forth to Kenya each year, working directly with small-scale Kenyan tea farmers. We've been doing this for the past 10 years. We learned about essentially the farmers' joys and struggles of working with tea, but they didn't have access to markets. And so we started connecting with them, living with tea farmers, featured on all the packages that we have, and said, hey, let's try to do something together. Let's see what we can do. Maybe a little bit naive at the time, because we didn't know how challenging of a journey this would be, to work across the world with a country that doesn't do very much direct trade partnerships. But here we are. It's been such a joy. I wouldn't want to do anything else after graduating from UBC. This is definitely my dream job and not one that I was expecting to have. So I'm happy you guys can all join in and hear a bit more about the story today. I think we're going to have a bit of Q&A with the host here, so I'll throw it back to you.
Yes. So for attendees, don't have any particular questions for now. But could you share a bit about, I didn't know that, for example, like the hot temperature would burn the tea. Is that for like all tea? Sorry, I might have missed that.
No, yeah. So You can get these kettles that have, it's pretty heavy because I just steeped it, or I just filled it up, but they have temperatures here. So it basically says like green tea, white tea, black tea. So black teas and herbal teas, so caffeine-free herbal teas like peppermint, chamomile, and then any black tea, Earl Grey, English breakfast, all of those teas are pretty forgiving. You're not really going to burn the leaves there, even if you do a full boil, it's fine. But for a more delicate tea like a green tea or a white tea, you just want to get that water a little bit cooled down. So you can, if you don't have a temperature controlled kettle, then you can just boil the water and then let it sit for about 5 minutes. And that's just because the leaf's a bit more delicate. It hasn't gone through that really full processing that a black tea or herbal tea goes through. So it's a bit more delicate. So you actually burn the flavor and some of the health benefits actually off of the leaf if you pour that hot water on it.
Thanks for sharing. I'll
No
make sure to
problem.
note that for my tea making.
And Kenya is pretty interesting because, as I just mentioned, there's different categories of tea. There's herbal tea, which is caffeine free. It actually doesn't come from the tea plant. The tea plant is actually a specific leaf called Camellia sinensis. And so the herbal teas, whether it's chamomile, peppermint, rooibos, those all just come from different botanicals, different flowers, different herbs. So they're actually not what's considered true tea. But if you pick from that Camellia sinensis tea leaf that grows in many, many countries in the world, they're just starting to grow some on Denman Island, actually, in BC here. Let me just pour this tea. I just saw the timer go off. So pause that for 1 second. So this is the purple rain that we'll be enjoying this morning. So you can see that beautiful bright purple crimson color. That actually comes from the hibiscus in this blend. This is a blend of lemongrass, hibiscus, passion fruit, apple. So it's really beautiful, fruity, delicious tea with the purple tea from Kenya. Really nice, hot or iced. Enjoy. Cheers. Yeah, it really wakes you up. That tartness from the hibiscus is perfectly balanced with some of the sweet notes from those passion fruit and the apple in there. Really tropical, bright and lively. Really delicious, one of our top sellers. Anyways, as I was saying, so the purple tea in this Purple Rain blend is actually a brand new category of tea. It's something that's very exciting. It's a new development in the tea industry. So you have your herbal teas, which I just mentioned. They don't come from the actual tea leaf, Camellia sinensis. But then you have this Camellia sinensis leaf, which is just an incredible plant. It can produce a green tea, it can produce a black tea, it can produce a white tea, it can produce an oolong tea, it can produce all these different teas and a purple tea just from that original leaf. And so it's all with the processing. So if you were to pick that leaf, just like you were to go outside and pick a tree leaf, and if you were to steam it like you would steam broccoli or any vegetables, and then just dry it in the sun or just dry it on a room heater, that's essentially what making green tea is. So you're picking that green tea leaf, you're steaming it, which is called arresting the oxidation, you're de-enzyming it, you're killing the green, you're not letting it process anymore, you're locking in that green flavor. And then you just dry it, that's a green leaf. So it's a very minimal processing. Whereas if you were to make an oolong or a black tea, you let it oxidize. So if you, oxidation is basically if you take a bite of an apple and you leave it on the counter, it starts to turn brown. That's what oxidation is. It's just you've broken the cell structure and now it's reacting with the environment and it's starting to essentially rot. And it's starting to change its flavor. So when you're making a black or an oolong tea, you pick that leaf and then you'll let it wither. You'll let it soften the leaf a little bit on like a cold fan bed. And then you're going to roll the tea. And once you roll it, you're breaking down that cell structure. And then you let it sit there and you let it oxidize. So an oolong is partially oxidized. You don't let it go the whole way like you would with a black tea, which is essentially a 24-hour process, whereas oolong may be like 16 hours. So then a green tea, it's only like a 5-hour process. But with a purple tea, which is extremely exciting, it's brand new, as I mentioned, it only grows in Kenya and it grows from a purple tea leaf. So unlike all those other teas that come from your green leaf that can make that black tea or that green tea or the oolong tea, only purple tea comes from a purple leaf. And the processing is similar to a green and oolong, but it's very unique to get its own health benefits and flavor from the tea. And so that's why it's so special. And it also has so many health benefits. It has more antioxidants than green tea. It has less than half the caffeine. It's incredibly delicious. And then it supports small-scale Kenyan tea farmers. So we have this is our purple tea trio, actually, we just came out with last year. So you get 3 different varieties in these stacking tins. And then it tells the story on this one of Agnes. Yeah, it's just a really incredible new tea from Kenya. And a lot of people don't know that Kenya is actually the largest exporter of black tea in the world. But the story of the farmer is not told. The story of the tea isn't told. And so we're hoping that purple tea is going to put Kenya on the map for high quality tea. And the farmer can earn more from that tea leaf that they worked so hard to grow and to pick in their tea gardens. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, we have a few more questions coming in. So one attendee asked if we'd like to find ethical global partnerships. How do you start that?
I'm getting this really cool, ominous light effect here. So right when that question came up too. The reason I giggle a little bit there is it is it there isn't a playbook. It's its own journey. It really is, from what I've seen from the books I've read, from the people I've talked to that have worked in global partnerships, especially that are trying to do something along the lines of fair trade. Um, it is all about relationships. It really is. It's about connecting. It's about that trust. It's about that belief in the product to be able to be tenacious and to keep going with it, because you know, like you face so many obstacles. When we first started, we thought we were going to get shut down by the tea board at the beginning, because there's a tea act in Kenya, so there's all these laws around who can grow tea and process tea, and they didn't have anything for small scale production. But with our partners, we said, no, this is actually going to create impact in the community. This is something that is new to Kenya, but it's going to have such a great benefit to creating sustainable employment that's needed in these small tea growing regions. And so over the years, as the tea board found out about what we were doing and we presented to them, they actually changed the laws in the Tea Act to allow for this small scale, what they call cottage farming practices. So it takes belief. One of the things in the bio I said is it's pole pole, which in Swahili means slowly, slowly. It's going over to the place, getting to know the people really well, inviting them to your house. It's some work and a lot of research. We didn't actually start for 2 years. We just spent 2 years researching, talking with different NGOs, talking with different community groups on the ground that have been doing this. We want to ensure that we were coming about this because it is a social enterprise. We didn't want to come about it just as, you know, this Canadian family that was slapping on a band-aid on some sort of problem and we thought it would fix it. We wanted to really do something that was from the ground up, essentially. So lots of trips back and forth and just letting our partners on the ground guide what was needed and what could really make this successful. And just having that ear, that open ear to listen to it. So unfortunately, I don't have any specific guidelines for setting up a global ethical partnership, but we're part of Fair Trade Federation, and there's lots of great resources and lots of great businesses there. Fair Trade Federation is a North American group of fair trade companies. So it's not like Fair Trade USA or Fair Trade Canada. It's a holistic approach to fair trade. So they'll look at all of the ingredients that you use in your product and ensure that they all follow fair trade principles. So if you're looking for other great fair trade brands, or if you're interested in what it means to be fair trade and how you might set up these partnerships, I definitely recommend looking at the Fair Trade Federation resource hub. If you just Google Fair Trade Federation, it should come up.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Then kind of following up on that question, what are some qualities that you look for in your partners or even staff to ensure that value alignment?
Yeah, no, that's great. So staff here, right away, we'll go through what those 10 Fair Trade Federation principles are, ensuring that we just have those core beliefs ingrained into all the decisions that we make. When we're looking for new teas to launch, when we're looking for new suppliers for whether it's our tea tins or the spoons that come with each tin. So everything we go about, we just have essentially this checklist that we'll follow through on, ensuring fair wages, ensuring no child employment, no exploitation, respecting cultural identity, respecting the environments with practices there. and so yeah, we'll go through those principles, and then with partnerships on the ground, it's a similar kind of thing. We have a questionnaire that we'll kind of go through, and usually it's going to be a couple trips to meeting the partner directly, and just getting to know them. Right now it might be just, you know, doing the Zoom call, and getting to know them face to face if we can't travel there. But when we set up a partnership, we really try to make it for the long term. So for Boaz, we've been working with him since the start in Nandi Hills. um, we really want to create that long-term sustainability of employment. So we take a bit longer at the start to set up those initial partnerships, and just to make sure that they're the right ones.
Yes, that value alignment is really important.
Mhm.
Another question I got from our attendee is they're just curious to learn a bit more about your backstory, like why did you pick Kenya and why tea or not coffee or other products?
Perfect. Yeah, so I graduated from UBC in 2012. Uh, it was with an arts bachelor. I had taken 0 business courses up until that point. Um, but I had done a focus on East African region with my studies, and social development, international aid, all of those things. So I'd spent some time already in Uganda, actually, when I was doing an exchange in Europe through UBC. And so that kind of really just got me excited about that region, and trying to get involved in something in that area. And so through working actually at JJ Bean here locally, I was very much a coffee drinker, but starting to learn about because JJ Bean follows a lot of fair trade and direct trade practices as well. So I started to get really interested about what this means of working directly with small scale farmers around the world. And so at the time I was just all about coffee, but I started to learn a little bit more about tea. And then once I started to hear about some of the opportunities in Kenya, I took a trip there with my dad and my cousin, actually, and we looked at a few different potential partnerships. But when we connected with this one tea farming family, and stayed on their farm for a week, it really was inspiring, and hearing their story, and the need that they had is to access markets, essentially, just creating an access to markets. And they didn't have an access to market at the time because they didn't have a finished product. They would just pick that leaf and they drop it off at the factory, and the factory would do the processing, add that value, and then they would sell it. So the farmer said to us, his name is Davison, if we can do what the factory does, if we can produce the tea at the farm gate, essentially, into a finished product, then hopefully you can buy it and drink it and enjoy it. And then so you cut out the middleman there. And so we said, it seems easy enough at the time. And so we came back and did a bunch of research, like I mentioned, talking to different NGOs, community groups, researching the Tea Act, talking to members in the Tea Board of Kenya. And at that point is when I was like, okay, I got to learn something about business here. So I started listening to a whole bunch of podcasts, reading a bunch of books. I've been now listening to a bunch of audiobooks. I just finished Ramping Your Brand. If you're in consumer packaged goods, any CPG brand, Ramping Your Brand is amazing. It doesn't have anything to do with social aspects, but social enterprise aspects, but it's really good. And so just reading a whole bunch of books, trying to get educated, trying to learn about how to make this something that could work for the farmer there, and then get the tea drinker here a delicious cup of tea. That was a whole nother process because we had to figure that out with homemade machinery in Kenya. We were fabricating rolling tables to roll the leaves with cooking pots. Like, it was all just very, very local, very patched together, but very fun. And in the end, we got some great recipes, and slowly have expanded from there to more of a consistent, high volume product that you can find in a lot of stores now across BC, across Canada, and of course online.
That's awesome. Then, do you have any like biggest lesson learned or things that you would do differently if you were to go back and start again, or give someone advice who's starting their own business?
Yeah, lessons learned. There's a lot of lessons learned. I, so we were trying to do things at the start. We were trying to do things at a pace still that I guess the West would do things at. So we wanted to get things done at a specific time. We wanted a specific quality, and we had demands from suppliers as well. And so we were putting a lot of pressure on our partners in Kenya, and they just kept saying, we're doing the best we can, trying to make this all work. So I think one of the lessons is just we were traveling to Kenya a couple times each year already, but I think even more time on the ground there would have been helpful, and bringing in some more people that knew what they were actually doing, because we were all kind of guessing. So seeking out more of those experts. We eventually did hire a consultant from Darjeeling, so famous tea growing region in India, and they came and did some lessons for us on how to make tea. I think that would have been helpful earlier on. It's just, we were very careful about cash flow, spending money. So just investing it in those areas that would have, cut that timeline down of quality consistency by a year or two, probably. And then just setting those expectations from the start, I think, is really important. So what we were hoping to achieve early on, we had let down some suppliers because we weren't able to deliver on some product. But actually, one of the things we did do really well is kind of follow that lean startup. Those lean startup principles is just getting that product out as soon as you can, even if it's not perfect, and then learning from the customer and iterating from there, making those changes, making those adjustments on the product to get to that product that you feel is quite complete, like where we're at now. And so I think that's something that we actually did do well. Even though we didn't have the same consistency in the tea, we definitely let down some customers. They stuck around because they believed in us. They knew we were starting out, and we were honest. We just said, like, this is going to be different this time because this has never been done before, and we're just trying to learn. This packaging is a little bit different than last time because we now have a new supplier as we're trying to adjust and get something that's more consistent. So I think we did well in getting to the market really early on. We actually launched with 2 crowdfunding campaigns, which I think was quite a good idea. And it was in 2013, so I'm not sure how that's changed now, the fees and whatnot to do that. But I would suggest that again, because we still sell to a lot of those customers that bought our product during those crowdfunding campaigns. So it was great for exposure. It essentially confirmed that we had a product. It validated what we were doing. And it was a great learning lesson to know what we need to improve on. So yeah, getting that product out there, getting it into the hands of people, even if it's just like your family and friends, for that feedback earlier on, not being so shy and just holding it back and waiting until you just have something that's perfect. It's going to take too long. You're going to run out of money. So just trying to go for it earlier on. You might fall on your face a couple of times, but you'll also be able to learn a lot. So I definitely suggest that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. There's been a lot of questions about funding and also in different sessions. So could you speak about kind of the pros and cons of crowdfunding, and if you had any other like support from the Canadian government or NPOs or programs to look into?
Mm-hmm. So for the crowdfunding, it was just direct to consumers. We didn't do like a front funder campaign or something like that for outside investors to actually hold equity in the company. It was all bootstrapped from the beginning through family and friends, just believing it and willing to put some dollars behind it. So thank you to everyone who did that. And also even in Kenya too, our partners in Kenya, like, they weren't taking a salary for a long time at the start, just trying to seeing where this is going to get to, some of the goals that we had set out. And so just believing in it and just making it work for those first couple of years. But as far as funding, the BC program through the BC government, Export Canada, Export Agriculture, what's it called? Investment Agricultural Foundation, incredible. The Can Export program as well. So those are 3 that I highly, highly recommend for grant funding. Those partnerships have been well worthwhile for us to be able to launch new products, for us to be able to explore trade shows. The amount of marketing that they allow us to do to gain exposure and brand recognition is incredible. So yeah, definitely check out BC, IAF, and then Export Canada, Can Export. Those are 3 great funding resources that you can definitely take advantage of as a BC company.
For sharing. I'll make sure to write that down for attendees. Another question I got is, so it just seems like you do spend a lot of time with your suppliers, partners in Kenya. How has COVID-19 impacted you in that relationship?
It's been hard. We actually were planning on getting to Kenya right when COVID hit. We had a trip that was being scheduled for May, and essentially all flights and everything was canceled in April of 2020. So we haven't been back there for over a year now. I'm hoping to get back by the end of this year if travel restrictions lift. Um, it's been a challenge. We still talk, quite regularly on WhatsApp, at least a couple times a week. We'll try to do some video calls. We actually do a live from Kenya, which was supposed to happen yesterday. I just realized. Whoops, we missed it. So we'll try to do a live from Kenya once a month with our partners, and they'll go live on our Instagram account, and so we could kind of do these interviews and connect tea drinkers like yourself to the farmer who made their cup of tea possible. So we try to do that once a month. So that's been helpful. That's been great, and also just been not only just to talk about tea and justly made tea in Kenya, fair trade tea, but also to hear about the COVID impact on the ground in Kenya, because obviously it's very different than here in Canada. There's much more limited testing and just unknowns around the virus there. They're talking about their vaccine rollout. I don't know. I believe it's just started, but obviously it's going to be a lot slower than what we're going through here. So the impact there has been noticeable with the partners that we work with not being able to go to work, whether it's the people who carve the spoons. So those have been delayed. The people who are the farmers who are making the tea, a lot of them have had COVID positive tests, and so they've had to shut down. Like it spreads so much differently in that country because in Kenya, a lot of it is about community. So you're going to have a lot of those closer relationships and relying on people. You can't isolate at home as easily as you can here. There's a lot more community reliance just to get by week to week or month to month. So the spread obviously can happen a lot easier as well. So it's overall, like, it could be a lot worse. Like, we're pretty thankful that most of our partners are in really good health, and we're looking forward to when we can get back there and work closer with them, and this is all behind us for sure.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Glad to hear that they're in good health now. Another question I got is, what are some challenges that you faced importing tea into Canada?
Yeah, so it's at the start we'd have more shipment exams from the CBSA. So at the port, or actually at the start, we were just doing shipments by air instead of by sea. So as long as you have your paperwork, your customs brokerage, your duty forms filled out, all of that, it actually wasn't too challenging. Fortunately, we didn't face too many issues. Right now, we actually have a major shortage on lots of our products because we have a container that's left 6 months ago and just has been delayed at port after port after port because of COVID. So now it's in Vancouver at its final delay. So hopefully that will be resolved soon. So there's always random things that come up. But as far as getting the paperwork, as long as you work with a customs broker at the start, learn how to do it, and then you should be fine. Fortunately, we haven't had too many challenges. The spoons, we've had a bit more challenges because you have to pay duty on the spoons. And then getting these out of Kenya as well can be fun. At the start, we were just putting these all in our backpack and leaving Kenya, and people were a bit confused at the airport what we were doing. But once we had the paperwork in order for those two, and they saw that they're all sustainably sourced, they're not cutting down illegally or anything like that. We actually have a reforestation program for the olive wood for these spoons. Then it gets a little bit easier. At the start, you just kind of got to learn and try, and you'll make mistakes, and you can go from there.
Yeah, it must be really confusing for them to see a backpack full of spoons.
3,000 spoons, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Can't imagine.
Yeah.
Another question I got is, what are some podcasts or books that you've read that helped you really launch your business and grow? You mentioned ramping your brand.
Yeah, so that's one that just came out recently. Actually just started going through a little bit of this one. It's called Traction. Some people really like it. I like half of it, I guess I would say. Like, part of it's good, part of it is like, okay, you don't really need to do all of it, but it's good for just applying some of that strategy. Radical Candor, that's from Google. That was really good about just like leadership, and how you connect with your staff, how you talk with your staff, and just that feedback kind of loop. No Rules Rules is really good, just came out as well. That's about the culture of Netflix. Very, very interesting for such a big corporation to have the culture that they do. It's called No Rules Rules because they basically have they give a lot of the responsibility and ownership of vacation time, of expenses to the employees directly. So it's very different than what most traditional large corporations would be doing. And then Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is great. So Tools of Titans, I think, came out last year, really good. Bill Beyond is one of his famous podcasts. And then the 4-Hour Work Week. At first, I was put off a little bit by it just because of the name, the title of it. I was like, 4-Hour Work Week, come on. But the efficiencies that he talks about in that book are just fantastic. So I definitely recommend that to learn about just how to, especially if you are in more of a CEO or a COO role, something that's you need to stay focused on the big picture. That's really great for just how you organize your day, how you delegate, how you focus. And then there's lots of different life books about just like the habits that you have. So High Performance Habits, really, really great book just in general about just your routines that you have in your life. I used to do a lot more podcasts, and now I just mostly am doing audiobooks. If anyone's interested, I have a huge list of audiobooks that I always am recommending to my friends. So you can always reach out to me directly. paul@justea.com is my email. Maybe we could put it in the chat or something, but feel free to connect if you have any questions or want any recommendations. Happy to give them.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. That's quite a lot of books. Then in terms of like you mentioned time management and prioritization, what are some like tips or learnings in that? Because as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you're really busy. There's always stuff to do. How have you find that process of managing and prioritizing?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I actually just started doing is there's this not movement, but there's this idea about just morning routines. It's called My Miracle Morning. So I've been looking into it for the past year, and I'm someone who in the morning just kind of wants to roll out of bed and go have my matcha tea and then some oatmeal and go to work. And so this kind of practice talks about starting your day with intention. So I would say like that's something to look into for sure. It's just that morning routine, getting up half an hour earlier to practice some affirmations, some visualizations, do some journaling, exercise, and meditation. I found that has been really helpful over the past month that I've been doing it. But then during the actual workday, I always try to build out chunks of my workday. So I'll try to plan my work week, on the Friday before that week starts, and look at the key big topics I need to focus on, the key items that I, as the tea captain, as the CEO at JusTea, really need to get done, and I'm essentially the only one who's going to be doing it. It's my responsibility. So you can always get lost in the busy work, but to stay on those important tasks is really important. And I find building out your calendar, I use iCal, lots of people use Google Cal, but actually putting time chunks into your calendar where that's all you do for that hour. I used to fall in the email trap where I'd work on something and then I'd see like a little notification come on my computer for an email, and I'd quickly click on that, and then all of a sudden I'm down this rabbit hole of email and like clicking on one thing to another thing, and I'm feeling like I'm doing lots of work. So I'm multitasking now. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting this and this, and then all of a sudden I realize I'm like, where did I start? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's this big picture thing that I'm supposed to be working on. So I try to go back to that. We have this this generation, my generation, the millennial, well, I'm part of the millennials, I guess, at the cuff here. It's, we did a lot of multitasking, at least I did, especially throughout high school and university. I thought it was a great skill, and now I realized, no, it's not a skill, because you're just, half of your focus is on all these different tasks, when really you should be putting 100% of your focus, get it done well, and then move on to the next one. So I build out chunks of time, and I only check my email twice a day. That's really important. Tim Ferriss talks about in the 4-Hour Work Week. He even does it, I think it's just once a day. If you're checking it throughout, then you're just going to be stuck responding to emails, because there's always another one that's going to come in after you send one. And so I check it twice a day. I read them all, send them all. It takes about half an hour, and I'll check it again at the end of the day, read them all, send them all. And I've taken off all email notifications on my computer. So while I'm working on something, I don't get that little pop up in the corner, which I find is really, really distracting. And if I see it there, it's so tempting to click on. So those are just a couple little tricks and tips that I find work.
Yeah, for sure. Email notifications are really distracting,
Yeah,
even for me.
don't let them come up. Take them
Yeah,
off.
I should
You can
disable
take those
them.
off. You don't need them. You just disable them. Exactly.
Yeah. So going back to, you mentioned the can export and trade show booth. What are some things that you had to do to prepare for trade show booth, and do you have any advice for our audience?
Yeah. So through those funding campaigns, whether it's Can Export, IAF, or Buy BC, they do help support trade shows. So they'll cover a portion of the trade show costs. But with trade shows specifically, one of the things that actually another lesson learned is we should have just walked more trade shows. We were under the impression that we're going to fly to this city in San Francisco or whatever, or New York, and we're going to be there anyways. We may as well spend the extra $5,000 and exhibit, or 10 grand for some booths, even for some of the bigger shows. What's the point of walking it first? What are we going to learn? But I think that's actually makes more sense, is to actually get there, walk the show. You'll still get funding if you do that, and just learn, look at what your competitors are doing at the show. See what their booths look like, see where you might want to be at the show. Is this even a good fit? Are these customers that are coming by even a good fit for you? We started doing Natural Products Expo West, Natural Products Expo East, Winter Fancy Food Shows, all these big shows in the States for the natural products industry, and quickly realized it's not worth it. We're not getting the return on it. Well, we didn't quickly realize it. We should have realized it earlier on. But you get into this, you get pressurized by media, by looking at what your competitors are doing. You feel like you have that FOMO. You're like, oh, I'm going to be missing out if I don't go and exhibit here. When really, a lot of brands, you're not big enough to go there yet. You don't have the recognition, and you don't have the relationships on the ground, like a broker or a distributor, who actually are going to bring by the key buyers at the show. So it's not worth it. They talk a lot about that in ramping your brand. It's a too early stage. If you're not doing 10 million in sales, like, don't do these shows. Just walk them, learn from them, get that foundation of buyers in that region. So before exhibiting. So we won't do a show now unless we have a sales broker on the ground, someone that's regional, that's going to bring by those key buyers from Whole Foods or New Seasons or Sprouts or whoever we want to approach and really get in at the show as a goal. Or a distributor that can actually ship our product locally there. Because shipping direct, a lot of customers are like, yeah, okay, you can ship direct to us, that's great. And they might order once, and then it's too much work for them. They want to order through distributor. They're not going to order from all these small suppliers, especially when you're in Canada. You're going to sell your product on their shelf, and it's going to be empty, and they're going to forget how to reorder from you, and maybe you can't reach them on the phone, and that's it. So it's not worth doing these really expensive trade shows. Do the local ones, like we'll do CHFA East and CHFA West in Toronto and Vancouver. Sure, it's not that expensive, and it's Canadian, and that's a key market for us. But the big ones in the US are a bit of a trap earlier on for startup companies.
Interesting to learn about that. Just really focusing on your customers, really understanding them, and just targeting the ones that you think are key instead of trying to do everything.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? That's exactly. Understand your customer, and
Yeah.
that's why that launching early on, that lean mentality, launching a product before it's ready, even just getting it out there to understand what your customer's looking for. What are the key attributes in your package? Is it this spoon that's attached to it? We're always going back and forth. There are people going to be like, I have way too many spoons, right? Does this story need to be so front and center? Like, what about the package do your key customers look for, right? Those customers that are going to continue to drink your tea or consume your product or enjoy your product, and also though talk about it, because word of mouth marketing is the most important marketing you can get. Someone that talks about your brand, that's not you, who believes in it, who's a customer, and they tell their friends and family, then they start to enjoy it, and that's the most authentic way to get more and more customers for your brand, and long-term customers, loyal customers at that. And you don't want every customer, like not every, like we've, at those shows too, you'll get Walmart approaching you, you'll get Target approaching you, and they're going to place PO for 10,000, but it's at a very, very low profit margin for you. And it's not the right customer. It's going to be this customer that's going to buy you once and never buy you again. So choose your actual end consumers correctly, target them correctly, and choose those retailer partners, those B2B partners correctly as well. It's a challenge, and you have to do a lot of learning and research and data collection at the beginning to figure out who that is. And we're still doing it. You know, it's always shifting, especially with COVID, right? Like our e-commerce went crazy, and our B2B went down because we sell to some cafes, we sell to a lot of gift shops, and a lot of those were closed. And so you have to understand who those key customers are and look at that growth and the long-term potential as well for those customer segments.
Yeah, you mentioned several times like getting the product out, having that lean startup mentality. I hear from a lot of founders and people that there is that concern to get it perfect before shipping. Maybe there's concerns to like branding, what that will mean for your brand, or maybe having to change something later that's pretty drastic to the business. Do you have any thoughts on that, or how you can minimize the risk, or when to consider some risk and when to just go for it?
Yeah, so get your trademark right, get your logo right. Those are the two key things, right? You don't have to spend too much time on it. Just get something that people are going to remember and that's easy to say and easy to spell, right? Like for us, you know, as I say that, everyone always writes just tea and they write two T's. So I'm always correcting people. It's not just tea, it's just tea. But it's still, this is more memorable like this. It's very clean, it's very simple. But the reason I say get those two things right is because you're going to want to ensure you're not infringing on anyone else's trademark or logo, word mark or trademark, and you want to be able to register it. So you want to be able to search Canada, US databases. If you have plans for Europe, like right now we're registering JusTea in Europe. So if you have plans international as well, do those searches. Who else has this trademark, or who else is going to potentially see an infringement on theirs because it's too similar to what yours is. So do that research for sure earlier on your logo, on your trademark. Get something that's clean, that's simple, that's memorable. But then the rest of it doesn't really matter. Like, so this original package, it's in the other room, but it looked completely different from what I'm holding here. I'm gonna get it, 1 second. I'll be 1 minute. Like, we used to hand wrap tins from fabric from Kenya. So this is a tin, and we would actually, my mom would wrap it with this fabric. It's peeling off here. So this is one of our original packages. And so, like, yeah, you're gonna make lots of changes as you go. It's going to shift, but as long as you can see the logo's still the same, right? You know, it can change colors and everything, but the logo stays the same. So that's what I mean. Like, get it out early, but make sure your trademark is correct. Make sure you have those things dialed in right at the start. And your logo, you don't need to change it because that's when it gets to be a big headache. But everything else, yeah, lots of other things can change. So don't worry about that.
Thanks for sharing. I love seeing like the evolution of
Yeah, and you know what,
the
this works.
product.
Like, we sold these in Whole Foods for like 3 years, right? Like these, like this is a different feel, right? These work.
Yeah.
Like, we slapped a barcode on the bottom, right? You need
Uh-huh.
to, like, that's another thing. You got to research, get a good barcode, make sure your barcode's registered. We just did like a random barcode generator at the start and then realized, oh, that's not how you do it. You actually have to register your barcode. So you can make it work at the beginning to learn, right? And so we learned quickly that, you know, people want more of the story, and to be able to get more of the story, we didn't want to throw another sticker on here. So we're like, okay, let's go to a print. And then this took, we used to wrap these with paper. Like this is about 7 years of iteration here. So it's a process. It's really fun. Get a good designer, get someone who knows what they're doing as well when you're making these changes. And always see what's out there. What are the competitors doing? What's the landscape? So look at your competitors and look and ask your consumers. Survey your consumers. They're more than happy to provide information, especially through email surveys. If you give them like a 10% coupon for your website, one of the easiest things you can do it probably once a year. That's typically what we do. And you find out lots of information. Why people are enjoying your product is the key thing you need to know, and that's how you can grow your business.
Thanks for sharing. Some other questions I got here was, um, do you think it's possible to launch a social enterprise with global partnerships during COVID?
Hmm. It's possible, sure, it's possible. If you, I think at the very like if you're launching, like you haven't talked to them at all before, it's going to be more challenging. But if you have a connection, like if you have, someone who's doing an introduction, or you're not just meeting this person for the first time, or also, an easy thing to do if it is more about fair trade, like an ethical partnership, then just look at the WFTO, the World Fair Trade Organization website, and look at the different members there. FTF, Fair Trade Federation, that we're members of, is part of the WFTO, same with Fair Trade USA, Fair Trade Canada. So all of those people that are members are going to have to follow some sort of fair trade principles. Fair Trade USA and Canada are different from FTF because they just look at the specific ingredient. And so there's a lot of tea companies that sell fair trade certified products, but as a company, they're not fair trade certified. They just will choose some from different farms, and that's it. Whereas with JusTea, we look at the whole thing. We look at the whole approach to our ingredient sourcing, and everything has to follow those fair trade principles. So it's a bit different that way. When you are looking for those partnerships, just understand a little bit what those verifications or certifications mean. So it's possible, especially if you are, not having to do all the vetting yourself. But if it's brand new and you have to do, you have to send them a questionnaire and talk with them over Zoom, it's going to be more of a challenge. I probably would wait until you actually get to travel and meet them for the first time. But that's just me. I like having that face-to-face connection. And I believe it can share a lot about who you are and who the person is that you're going to be working with.
Yeah. Another question I got was, what kind of impact are you bringing to the local communities? And has that changed when you first started till now?
So our goal in Kenya is to create employment for 10% of the tea growing community there. So there's over 500,000 small scale farmers, about 560,000. So we want to create some sort of employment for about 56,000 small scale farming families, tea farming families. And so we're not even close to doing that, and it's shifted as well, for sure. We've realized now that that's a lot of tea that we're going to have to be buying from them, to be able to have that sort of impact for farmers. So now we're looking more about, like, okay, it's creating opportunity. So whether it's creating spoon carving jobs, where now it's about 150 carvers now have sustainable employment from carving these little spoons. It's about the lifeguarding campaigns, so growing organic vegetables, medicinal herbs, through what we call Kenya Organic Life Gardens. So we partnered with a wonderful local charity here in Vancouver called Thrive. And so we're doing these free organic training workshops in Kenya. And so it essentially sets up a community garden where people can grow and harvest their own food, so they don't have to rely on the local market. And the surplus that they have, they can start to sell and have a bit more income coming in for their family. And so while we'd like to work with as many farmers as we can, we don't have the demand yet. So as that demand grows, as we have more people asking about Kenyan teas, because it's still, as I mentioned, even though they're the largest exporter of black tea, no one knows about Kenyan tea because it goes into those Red Rose tea bags, those Lipton tea bags. It's not branded as Kenya. It's just a commodity black tea, really strong, really narrow flavor profile, but your classic black tea that you would have maybe had at your grandma's house or something, and some people still really enjoy. But it's not that whole leaf quality that we're trying to do here. So until people start requesting Kenyan teas, and also just that the demand for knowing where your product comes from, it's starting. It's still, it's maybe more so in the coffee industry, like people asking those questions, like who harvested these coffee cherries, who processed these into the green beans, who roasted these coffee beans. That's maybe a bit more on the forefront as opposed to tea, but we're starting to see it bubble up a little bit, where people are like, I want to know the story of the tea I drink. I want to know who made it. I want to know that it was done with fair trade practices in mind. But until that really happens and becomes at the forefront instead of behind the scenes, it's going to take a long time to have that kind of impact that we want to have. But we're going to keep going, and we're going to find different ways of creating sustainable employment in Kenya, and opportunities. So one of the things that we're doing is all the partners I work with, they'll earn basically 20 to 30% more than the industry average. And at the start, I was like, well, why wouldn't it be 50%, or why 20 to 30%? And that's basically just from talking with our partners, like Boaz and Jamila in Nandi Hills, and learning from there. Like, well, they just told us, like, imagine if you got a 50% raise all of a sudden, right, over your neighbor, and you guys both worked in the same industry, like that's going to really cause a divide in the community, and it's going to cause a big ripple effect. So 20 to 30% makes sense because it follows fair trade principles. It's not too much of a jump, but it's enough of a jump to be able to have some savings now, to pay those school fees, actually save some money as a family, and just essentially as a fair wage. So trusting those partners on the ground to be able to ensure what we're doing makes sense for the community and for the long-term sustainability of their families. And then in Eastern Kenya, actually, I haven't mentioned this, but we work with an incredible women's co-op where we get our lemongrass from and our hibiscus from. And so it's incredible what they're doing. 80% of the people that are making these botanicals, these herbal ingredients, are ladies, and they're really, in a patriarchal society as Kenya. It's really wonderful seeing that opportunity there, and we're one of their first partners here in Canada. And so I'm excited actually when all of you guys can join us on Kenya. We can do a little tour, a tea tour, and get to meet these people and enjoy some tea right at the tea gardens. That'll be fun. We're trying to figure out how we can do that. We're hoping maybe this year, but obviously not. That's not going to happen with COVID. But so maybe in the next couple of years we'll put something on our website. So yeah, check if you're not on our newsletter, get on our newsletter, because we'll do different updates about our partnership in Kenya, where we're going, and some of those fun, exciting adventures that are coming up that you might be able to join us on.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that sounds really great. Lots of great impact. Then do you have any things to share with, like, for example, consumers who are hoping to buy more ethical products? What are some ways to support, for example, social enterprises, businesses who are doing sort of what you're doing, other than buying the product? Is there anything else?
Um, Talk about the product. Yeah, share the product with your friends. I think the first thing though is just ask those questions. So like look at the product. You might not have time in the grocery store, especially right now. It's kind of stressful just with all the lineups and everything. So once you get home, just read a bit more about the brand, try to find out more on the package, look on their website if it is something that you really enjoy, right? So start to understand, where your dollars are going, what practices they are supporting. And if it's something that you believe in, and of course you can look for those trust symbols like fair trade and everything. Those are some quick, easy ways to learn about it. Looking for the person actually on the package who made the product possible. Like that's another way to tell, kind of the beliefs of the company that you're buying. And then once you do that, yeah, it's really helpful just to share it with your friends, give it as a gift. Join in the community on social media if you do that thing. Join in on their newsletter. Like, just get involved. It's really helpful. And then just be aware, like, for certain products, it's more important than others to really look at the fair trade practices behind it, and then of course things like organic and whatnot. So like chocolate, the chocolate industry is really important to look at that fair trade, for those fair trade certifications and organic. And so just understanding a little bit more about those products that you might buy a lot of, like for me, chocolate, and knowing that these are the values that you want to look for in those products every time you buy them.
Thanks for sharing. That's really important for us as consumers to know. Just as we wrap up, could you share a bit about what's next for JusTea, and also any closing thoughts before wrap up?
Yeah, we have lots of stuff coming up. It's all been pushed back because this container is still sitting at the port, but we have some new teas that are launching coming up in the next couple of months. So definitely stay tuned to that. We have our first green tea that's going to be launching, which is really, really tasty. We just launched our turmeric ginger here. So this guy just launched. It's the turmeric ginger, really nice. So the lemongrass in this one comes from the women's co-op. So you can get these online. They're not really in stores yet, but they will be. If you have a favorite store that you shop at and they don't carry JusTea, it really helps us out. Or any other brand that you really believe in. If you just ask the store manager, the clerk, the cashier, whoever, customer service, to start carrying it. They really respect that feedback from their customers. So yes, we have different teas launching up. We have some new partnerships in Kenya that we're going to be starting up. Yeah, we're just going to keep going. It's a fun journey, and happy that you guys were able to learn a bit more about it and join us today on this presentation.